Did you have pity on him? No. Undertaker's voice was flat. Hogan gets no sympathy. And, frankly, he had his reasons. To him, Hogan's death was no tragedy. It was karma catching up at last. But it wasn't just about settling scores. It was the lies, the manipulation, the broken trust that defined Hogan's legacy. Let me tell you his reasons. The end of the beginning, the golden goose became a snake. To get a sense of how much The Undertaker felt about Hulk. Hogan, we're going back to the Survivor Series in Detroit, Michigan on November 27, 1991. This was no ordinary wrestling match. This was the night that forever changed the way The Undertaker viewed the man who should have been wrestling's greatest hero. The Undertaker was just in his second year with WWF and only 26 years old when he took on Hulk Hogan for the WWF Championship. He was set to be the youngest champ in company history, a moment that should have been the high point of his early career, but Hulk Hogan had other ideas. Like I was crushed. Well, thank goodness. And the whole deal was it was a setup from the beginning, right? So, back in the day, we'd typically show up noon, on a TV or a pay-per-view day. We arrived to the arena about noon, 1 o'clock. Hogan would be rolling in around 4 or 5. So, I remember getting there about noon, and Hogan was already there, and I'm walking down the hall. The first warning sign should have been transparent. Known for his fashionably late arrivals to events, Hogan was at the arena at noon when The Undertaker arrived. This was unprecedented behavior from a man who had built a career on making dramatic entrances and keeping people waiting. The Undertaker, however, was still new to the business and keen to prove himself, and so he didn't immediately see the warning signs of what was to come. Flag 1. Number 1 red flag, right? So he goes, hey kid, can I speak to you? Yeah. So we go into one of the locker rooms into the shower, right? That's where all the business was always done back in the day, whenever that was. You went into the shower to fight, settle, whatever score it was, it always happened in the shower. So he tells me, he goes, hey, I got this neck injury. I'm kind of nervous about taking your finish, he says. The next thing was a masterclass of psychological manipulation. Hogan pulled The Undertaker aside into the shower, the traditional place for serious wrestling business talks, and started planting the seeds for what would be one of the most calculated betrayals in wrestling history. He said he was already hurt in the neck and was scared of getting The Undertaker's finishing move, the tombstone piledriver. Undertaker, the consummate professional he would become famous for, immediately put Hogan at ease. And I was like, believe me, Hulk, I promised I'd keep you safe. I take pride in not hurting people. And I promise you I'll have you so tight, there's no way you're going to hurt your neck. But Hogan wasn't done with his psychological warfare. All day long, every time The Undertaker saw him, he would remind him of the supposed neck injury. He'd get every point through the day, in the hall or something. I'd get my neck, remember? So that's all I had all day. It was, my neck. This wasn't a random repeat. It was a calculated ploy to get inside The Undertaker's head, to make him second-guess himself, and to create a situation where Hogan could dictate the story regardless of how the match actually played out. Hogan was setting up The Undertaker for a fall that would save his own skin while possibly destroying a budding star's career. When the match concluded, The Undertaker hit the tombstone pile driver with textbook precision. We arrive at the finish. Flair comes down, slides the chair over. I scoop him up, and when I tell you, I had the brother locked down. He was okay. Boom. I give him the gravestone. As soon as my knees hit, I hear, oh, you got me, brother. My neck and my back. As The Undertaker's knees hit the mat, the ground, the exact spot to ensure the safety of the opponent during a tombstone piledriver. Hogan began his performance. He immediately started selling his neck and back, selling the injury like The Undertaker had legitimately hurt him. Imagine being a 24-year-old wrestler who had been mentally prepared all day for this very moment, and it must have felt like his worst nightmare had become reality. Am I back again? I just how I'm like, no, you've got all these. I was 24, 25 years old, and, I just crushed Hulk Hogan, right? That's what's going through my head, they gave me this opportunity, they gave me the chance to run with the ball, and I just hurt the golden goose. The term Golden Goose wasn't chosen lightly in the wrestling business of the early 1990s. Hulk Hogan literally was the most valuable asset the company had. He was the draw that filled arenas, sold merchandise, and generated the revenue that made the WWF tick. The thought that a guy who was relatively unknown could have caused damage to this cash cow would have been catastrophic, not only to The Undertaker's career, but to the entire company. But what was happening behind the scenes was even more dramatic and calculating than what was happening in the ring. Oh, he's on the floor of Vince's office. So I get in there, he's on the floor, he's carrying on, and I'm going to go check on him, but then here come the paramedics and all that. So me and kayfabe, right? So I'm walking behind a wall and with Shane. Picture the scene. The Undertaker has just won his first WWF title in what should have been the greatest moment in his young career. He's not celebrating. He's cowering behind a wall with Shane McMahon, listening to paramedics check out a writhing Hulk Hogan on the floor of Vince McMahon's office. Hogan's play, so convincing he even asked for his wife and kids to be called, adding even more drama to an already tense situation. Shane's right there telling me, he goes, "Mark," his head wasn't anywhere close to touching that mat. And I'm like, no, man. I couldn't hear it. I was like, no, man. I heard him. I don't know what, I couldn't put a thought together. I simply, Yokozuna in the main event for the title. Hogan pulled off a last-minute switch, and the Hulkster convinced Vince McMahon to let him face Yokozuna right after Hart's match, winning the title in an impromptu 22-second match. Hart agreed to the booking on the promise that Hogan would put him over later in a return match, but Hogan refused, saying Hart was not marketable enough because of his smaller size and tag team background. The treachery cost Hart what should have been a defining moment as champion and demonstrated Hogan's willingness to leverage his political power to his own advantage at the expense of other performers. Hart has not concealed his contempt for Hogan, branding him a fake and criticizing his limited in-ring ability. It is evident that their 2005 WWE Hall of Fame encounter, in which Hart refused to shake Hogan's hand, was only one visible manifestation of a much deeper animosity. But the pattern of backstage manipulation wasn't confined to these high-profile incidents. 2000 Hogan feuded with cruiserweight Billy Kidman in WCW, an angle that was supposed to elevate Kidman to a higher status. Hogan's public disparagement of Kidman in radio interviews, he said he couldn't draw flies at a flea market, did not help Kidman's credibility, but rather damaged the entire storyline. This public burial not only embarrassed Kidman, but killed any chance of the feud being a success. Even Shawn Michaels, one of wrestling's most divisive figures, had serious Hogan's behavior problems. Hogan and Michaels had previously booked a series of matches for their 2005 SummerSlam match, in which each would get a win. But when it was time for the rematch, where Michaels was supposed to get the win back, Hogan used his pull to make sure he won, reneging on the agreed-upon plan. Michaels, frustrated by this betrayal, oversold Hogan's moves in their match, turning it into a comedic performance meant to mock the Hulkster. But maybe the most, the telltale side of Hogan's character wasn't just his willingness to stab other wrestlers in the back. It was his sheer inability to acknowledge or take responsibility for his actions. When confronted with his behavior, Hogan constantly deflected, justified, or outright denied the truth, even in the face of evidence. This pattern of dishonesty was not limited to wrestling politics, but pervaded every aspect of his public persona. Hogan has a well-documented history of outrageous lies and exaggerating. Stories he said he was asked to join Metallica as their bass player, but the members of the band have denied this. He also said he was offered the lead role in The Wrestler, a claim that has been debunked. He even said Elvis Presley was a fan of his wrestling, even though Presley died shortly after Hogan's career began. These fabrications may seem innocuous on their own, but they reveal something significant about Hogan's relationship to the truth. When someone is prepared, it casts doubt on their truthfulness in more important issues to make false claims about small, easily verifiable facts. If Hogan was willing to make up stories about hanging out with rock stars and getting movie offers, why wouldn't he make up a story about an injury to protect his wrestling career? Dishonesty was a problem in itself, but even more so when it crossed paths with serious legal and ethical issues. In the 1990s WWF steroid trial, Hogan initially denied using performance-enhancing drugs, saying his vitamin story to keep his family-friendly image. But confronted with the possibility of perjury charges, he admitted under oath to using steroids from 1976 to 1989, a contradiction of years of public denials. This wasn't only about personal drug use. Hogan's willingness to lie under oath to protect his public persona as an anti-drug crusader while using steroids disgusted many of his peers. What sort of confidence could wrestlers have in a man who would publicly preach clean living and privately doing the opposite and then lying about it when asked under oath? But the most damaging revelation of Hogan's character occurred in 2015 when audio from a 2007 sex tape caught him using racial slurs while talking about his daughter Brooke's relationship with a black man. In the remarks, F. Hogan said, "I mean, I'd rather she was going to F***, I'd rather have her marry an 8-foot-tall N worth $100 million like a basketball player. I guess we're all a little racist. He said, I'm a racist to a point. Out of everything that I've been through, this one hit me probably the hardest. And that's a hell of a thing to say because I've been through a lot of crazy stuff." The disclosure of these racist comments resulted in WWE dropping Hogan from their contracts and erasing him from the Hall of Fame. But for many wrestlers, particularly black performers, this wasn't surprising news. It was confirmation of suspicions they had harbored for years. Mark Henry said the comments hit him personally because of wrestling's history of racial stereotypes. As black wrestlers collectively demanded Hogan's real accountability, I was to the point where I want to kill myself. I sat in my bathroom by myself when my ex-wife was gone and the kids were gone, and I was completely broken and destroyed. And even though he was reinstated into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2018, many wrestlers and fans were still suspicious of Hogan's apologies. The pattern was all too familiar. When Hogan was caught doing something wrong, he would make public apologies that sounded more like image protection than real regret. His associations with conservative political figures, including his raucous support of Donald Trump, only added to the critics' belief that Hogan's racial attitudes had not changed on a fundamental level. For The Undertaker, watching the revelations of Hogan's character unfold over the decades must have been like watching a slow-motion confirmation of everything he'd suspected since. 1991. The same man who lied to his face about a fake injury. The same man who betrayed Jesse Venner's union efforts, sabotaged other wrestlers' careers, lied under oath about steroid use, and had racist attitudes while maintaining a public persona as an all-American hero. The final judgment when karma finally caught up to Hulk Hogan. By January 6, 2025, the wrestling world had changed drastically since that November night in 1991 when a young Undertaker first heard the truth about Hulk Hogan's character. The industry had become more transparent. Fans were privy to behind-the-scenes information, and the carefully crafted facades that shielded wrestling's biggest stars were being chipped away by the relentless scrutiny of social media. But perhaps nowhere was this transformation more apparent than when Hulk Hogan walked out for his final WWE appearance at Monday Night Raw's Netflix debut and was greeted with a chorus of boos that would have been unthinkable during the peak of Hulkamania. For The Undertaker, watching from behind the curtain as his arch-rival was turned away by the very people who once worshipped him. No room for sympathy. It was vindication. After more than 30 years of keeping his feelings about Hogan mostly to himself, the dead man's response was as cold and cutting as any tombstone pile driver he ever delivered. That pop was something. It was something. It was a pop. That was an ego pop. Lord heard. Wonder what you think. He went back to the dress. Well, you were there. I was there. What happened? What happened backstage after he came back? No. For when I saw him, he was no selling it and pushing his beer. I didn't see him. I wasn't backstage when he came. The term ego pop was particularly cutting. A wrestling industry term for when someone gets a reaction based purely on their own self-importance rather than genuine fan appreciation. Did you feel bad for him? No. Hey man, I got feelings. I got feelings for people like sometimes in life things come back. Those 5 words, "sometimes in life things come back," summed up 3 decades of repressed frustration, professional disappointment, and moral judgment. The Undertaker wasn't gloating over Hogan's humiliation out of petty vindictiveness. He was pointing out that the wrestling business, like life itself, has a way of bringing justice to people who have spent years deceiving others. But to understand why this moment felt like such poetic justice to The Undertaker and so many others in the wrestling community, we need to look at just how utterly Hogan's life had fallen apart by 2025. The man who had once been wrestling's golden child had become a figure of controversy, family dysfunction, and public rejection, and much of it was the direct result of the character flaws that The Undertaker had identified more than 30 years earlier. Hogan's family life had become a public disaster that was a perfect illustration of the fallout from his selfish and manipulative ways. His marriage to Linda Hogan ended in a bitter divorce in 2009 that was marked by allegations of his infidelity with Christian Plant, a friend of his daughter Brooke. The affair was confirmed by Plant in a 2008 National Enquirer interview that was not only a betrayal of his wife, but of the trust of his daughter as well. The pattern of selfishness that had characterized Hogan's professional relationships was just as apparent in his. A situation that became even more tragic when we learned that, by March 2025, his daughter Brooke had not spoken to him for around 8 years. Personal life. My family is in the worst mess. Brooke doesn't talk to us. She's had twins. She got married. She didn't tell us. She had twins. She didn't tell us. She had a huge fight with Terry. I don't know how that reflected onto me, but she got me out too. I haven't talked to her for 7 years. Almost 8 years now. Reasons. In March 2025, Brooke went public with the fact that she had gone no contact with both parents due to extreme verbal and mental abuse dating back to childhood. The arrangement was so complete that when Brooke married Stephen Alexi and had twins in January 2025, Hogan showed no interest in meeting his own grandchildren. When Hogan passed away on July 24th, 2025, Brooke chose not to attend his funeral, instead honoring him privately at a beach. Her explanation to the public was that Hogan hated the morbidity of funerals and did not want one. But the underlying message was clear. Their relationship remained fractured even in death. Hogan's son Nick also brought shame to the family through his reckless behavior. In 2007, at age 17, Nick was involved in a high-speed car crash that left his friend John Graziano permanently brain damaged and in need of lifelong care. The accident led to a civil lawsuit from Graziano's family, and Nick serving 166 days in jail. As recently as November 2023, Nick was arrested again for driving under the influence, proving that he'd taken nothing from his previous tragedy. Hogan's family dysfunction wasn't incidental. It was the inevitable result of the same selfishness and dishonesty that characterized his professional relationships. When you build your life on lies and manipulation, when you put your own image above the welfare of others, when you're willing to screw anyone in order to save yourself, the consequences are going to ooze into every aspect of your life. Even after his 2018 reinstatement, many fans and wrestlers were still dubious of Hogan's apologies. The pattern was familiar to anyone who had been paying attention to Hogan's career. When caught in wrongdoing, he would make public statements that seemed designed more to protect his image than to show genuine remorse. His later political activities, including his vocal support for Donald Trump, cemented the belief of many critics that his racial attitudes had not fundamentally changed. But last week, what happened? When they tried to take a shot at my hero, and they tried to kill the next president of the United States. Enough was enough. Let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpania reign once more. Let Trumpania make America great again. Hogan's political trajectory in his final years was the culmination of his metamorphosis from beloved hero to polarizing figure. His presence at the 2024 Republican National Convention, where he ripped off his shirt to reveal a Trump Vans tank top while declaring, "Let Trumpomania run wild, brother," got mixed reviews as inflammatory remarks about then Vice President Kamala Harris asking, "Do you want me to body slam Kamala Harris?" Further alienated fans who remembered a time when Hulkamania meant unity, not division. By the time of his final WWE appearance in January 2025, The metamorphosis was complete. The man once cheered by millions was now being booed as he tried to peddle his real American beer. Hogan's own explanation for the negative reaction fans were rejecting his political beliefs showed he still didn't understand that the problem wasn't his politics, but his character. The democratization of wrestling information through podcasts, shoot interviews, and social media had finally revealed the truth that wrestlers like The Undertaker had kept private for decades. Fans now knew about Hogan's betrayal of Jesse Ventura's union efforts, his manipulation of younger wrestlers, a pattern of lies and exaggerations, and his willingness to put his own success ahead of his colleagues. When Hogan died on July 24, 2025, exactly a decade after his WWE termination, the timing seemed almost poetic. He died of cardiac arrest at his home in Clearwater, Florida, following complications from neck surgery and while battling chronic lymphocytic leukemia. I've had 17 surgeries in the last 10 years. Oh my God. The circumstances of his death, weakened by years of wrestling, injuries, and the physical toll of a demanding lifestyle were a reminder that even the mightiest personas are ultimately mortal. What's not original here? The knees are fake, the hips are fake. The back's full of metal, and part of my face is full of metal. I didn't get the memo about the fake wrestling. I was going to say, yeah, I missed that part. But perhaps the most telling aspect of Hogan's death was how it was received by the wrestling community and his own family. Some peers, such as Ric Flair and John Cena, paid respectful tributes, and others, such as The Undertaker, kept their measured distance. The fact that his own daughter did not attend his funeral and felt the need to publicly respond to claims that he had tried to make amends with her before his death spoke volumes about the personal cost of his behavior. Like the video, click one of the cards to dive into more content like this.